They're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
Everyone, welcome to the show. So one of these stories hit, and I was like, I'm not going to cover it. And then there was another one. And what I'm talking about is Republicans getting into physical fights with each other. So here's the deal. On July 29th, Republicans gathered in Georgia. They were there to celebrate the opening of a Donald Trump campaign office. According to the police, though, and also a report by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, a brawl broke out. So this was towards the end of the event, and Republican State Representative John LaHood, he was involved in this. He told the AJC news outlet, meaning the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, that he was mingling. He was mingling with the crowd. All of a sudden, this conservative activist, a guy named Sam Carnleen, he comes up, confronts LaHood about election-related measures. So Carnleen said, I don't think that you were strong enough. This stuff is not good enough. By the way, this Carnleen guy, he was wearing at this event a T-shirt in support of paper ballots. So he's one of those. He's one of the My Lumpy Pillow Man crew, apparently. Anyway, LaHood said, the conversation got a little heated. He and Carnleen were having what he called a passionate discussion. And then another man decided to intervene because the other man didn't like the questions that Carnleen was asking. So the man who intervened is Brandon Phillips. He was described by AJC as a Republican operative and a top aide to a current sitting U.S. congressman. So the police wrote in their report that Phillips gets in the middle of these two men. There's words exchanged between Phillips and Carnleen because Carnleen was angry that Phillips spit in his face. That's what he said. Phillips claims, I didn't spit in Carnleen's face. Another person said, if he did, it was unintentional because it did get pretty heated. And so it, maybe happened, but it wasn't like purposely he spit. So anyway, a fight breaks out. Phillips told the police that Carnleen pushed him to the ground during this whole melee, and witnesses said that they saw Carnleen punch Phillips at least 2 times. Carnleen tells a slightly different version of the story. He said that Phillips got between him and LaHood, and that Phillips told him, quit bothering LaHood. And then Carnleen refused. He said, no, I'm not going to stop. And he claims that Phillips started insulting his family. Carnleen said, quote, I probably pointed at him and told him to get away from me. He immediately spit in my face, and at that point, I pushed him and shoved him as hard as I could. He jumped back up, I cocked my fist back and was intending to hit him, but I might have just glanced his shoulder. Then people talked me down, but he deserved it. So ultimately, the fight was broken up by another state lawmaker, guy who's a former Army veteran. It's unclear how the police got involved, but they said there was no police report filed. Both parties agreed to just disengage, go their separate ways. So, okay, you might think, that's one incident. What's the big deal? No, that is not just one incident. This is a pattern in the Republican Party now. This past week, another fight erupted. It was at a Republican meeting in Arkansas. So check this out.
Do not threaten her. She got that.
So for everyone listening on the podcast, here's what went down. There was a smaller man. He squares off against another man who's probably got at least 6 inches on him and 100 pounds. The smaller guy knocks the other guy to his knees, the bigger guy. So the smaller man is apparently a talk radio host. His name is Jimmy Cavan, or Cavan, not sure how you pronounce it. He literally jumped up in the air and punched the bigger guy in the face. The larger man, John Newcomb, once he went down to his knees, the two of them started wrestling on the ground. And then a bunch of other people jumped in, they pulled them apart. So that video was recorded by a local activist, guy named Kenneth Wallace. He put it up on Rumble. And the details are a bit thin right now, but evidently the whole thing started with 2 women. The 2 women were arguing. There was like a question and answer segment of the meeting. They argued, they started walking away, going their separate ways, and then that happened. So here's the thing. It doesn't matter why it started, right? The point is, this new ReTrumplican party is filled with the most out of control, angry, whiny people who live in a perpetual state of victimhood. They're just looking for a reason to fight. You don't have to give them one. It takes very little, because whatever childhood trauma they had, they still haven't dealt with it. And these aren't the only examples, because you guys might remember this one. If not, here's a sample, okay? This fight took place in July of 2023. This was at a Michigan Republican meeting. There was a Republican man named James Chapman. He assaulted another man named Mark DeYoung. Mark DeYoung is the Republican Party chairperson for a county in Michigan. So DeYoung ended up in the emergency room. That's how bad it was. And he told the Detroit News that Chapman, quote, kicked me in my balls as soon as I opened the door. DeYoung said that Chapman then slammed him into a chair, slammed his body into a chair, and fractured his rib. That's how out of control these people are. Now, Chapman told a little bit different story, but he's since been charged with 2 misdemeanors for the attack. So clearly the evidence pointed to the fact that he was at fault. And this one with this Chapman and DeYoung guys, this was the second physical fight at a Michigan Republican meeting in 2023. The first one involved 2 women, and it was in April. So it was between 2 very inebriated women, at least that's the way it looked from the video. The Kalamazoo Republican Party chair, Kelly Sackett, she goes up, and after some back and forth, and they were kind of circling around each other, and she was following the other woman around and kind of, getting in her face and making snide remarks. So she goes up, she slaps the cigarette and phone out of the hand, or excuse me, it was the other woman who was like getting in her face and so forth. Anyway, she slaps the cigarette and phone out of the hand of Melissa Pellis, I think is how you pronounce it, P-E-H-L-I-S. Melissa Pellis is the Macomb County GOP secretary. So I take that back. I had it right the first time. So Pellis was the one who was kind of walking around and kind of avoiding the other woman who slapped the phone and the cigarette out of her hand. She was the one who was kind of instigating. So Pellis then shoves Sackett's head. So that whole thing was also caught on camera. And, who can forget this? Who can forget this jackass? Republican Mark Wayne Mullen, might remember this because it just happened in the past year. He challenged the head of the Teamsters Union to a fight. So the Teamsters Union president was there testifying before the Senate. And Senator Mullen says, oh, you want to go? Let's go. I mean, God, it's just sickening. It's like, I would say frat boys, but obviously it's, women as well involved in this stuff. And there was this other close call between Republican Congress member Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene that you might remember, because Greene called Boebert a little bitch. This was on the House floor, and then they nearly came to blows in the women's bathroom. It's unbelievable. It would be unbelievable if we hadn't lived through the past, 8 years or so of Donald Trump. If I had told you guys 10 years ago that Republicans, they're going to start getting physical with each other, they're going to start physically fighting each other, they're going to be totally cool with a presidential candidate who's been found liable of sexual assault, a guy who's guilty of 34 felonies. If I had told you that, if I had told you that they were openly embracing white supremacists, not even trying to hide it anymore, that they're elevating and embracing candidates who are deadbeat dads, who are slut-shaming rape victims. And they love Russia. They love Russia and Putin now. If I had said all of that to you 10 years ago, you would have told me to put the crack pipe down. Seriously, you guys would have been like, Gina, put the crack pipe down, back away from the crack pipe. That is how far we've come in less than a decade. That is where we are with the Republican Party of today, the ReTrumplican MAGA Party. These people are insane. They're just insane. Like I said, a lot of childhood trauma that has gone untreated, and they're all coalescing around the apricot Antichrist because, he tells them what they want to hear. He plays into all of their fears. And they see in him how they're feeling inside, just angry, resentful, just, it must be miserable to be them, honestly. Anyway, therapy, guys. Get some therapy, Republicans. Really. All right. I will let you all know if I hear any more, if I hear of any more fistfights breaking out. But there you go. All right. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe to the channel if you have not. Please donate if you possibly can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.